These are the Artian weapons, and they are some of the very best weapons in the entire game, as not only are they capable of having a ton of attack and a lot of elemental power on top of having great decoration slots and being customizable. So in this video, not only am I going to be showing you how to craft these Artian weapons and what are the best upgrades that you should choose to have on your own weapons, I'm also going to be showing you how you can be farming these efficiently so you can get a ton of them in an instant. The way that these Artian weapons works and how you should craft them can seem a little bit overwhelming, especially since you can mess it up and end up making your weapon worse than it should be, but hopefully by the end of the video, not only will I have earned your subscription, but you will also be comfortable and know exactly how to get the rolls you want on your Artian weapons. With that being said, hello everyone, my name is Dark Hero and let's get started. And please keep in mind that due to the nature of this system, the Artian weapons essentially being a core aspect of the endgame of Monster Hunter Wilds, I will do my best to keep things spoiler free, so if you know the monsters that Capcom has revealed, I'm not going to reveal anything that they themselves have not revealed, but keep in mind that these are endgame systems. You will unlock the ability to craft these Artian weapons once you reach the endgame of Monster Hunter Wilds, so after you finish all of low rank and as you are progressing through the quests in high rank, around Hunter rank 30 or so, the tempered monsters will begin to spawn. And if you take a look at the map here, I have this tempered Gypsaros right here that if I select, I'm able to see the different bonus rewards that I'm able to get out of them, and among them we have these damaged weapon shards. So how do you unlock the Artian weapons? You'll first gain the ability to craft these weapons. Once you reach the endgame of Monster Hunter Wilds, you do all of the quests in low rank, and as you progress through high rank, around Hunter rank 21 or so, you will unlock the tempered monsters. And it's from some of these tempered monsters that you'll be able to obtain materials that you will need to craft the Artian weapons. So if we open up the map and take a look at this tempered Gypsaros that I have right here, you'll see that under the rewards that I have available for defeating him, I have these damaged weapon shards. These special appraisal items are some of those materials that I mentioned that are going to be required in order to craft the Artian weapons. And these actually come in 3 different rarities. Here we have rarity 5, which is the lowest. Here we have this tempered Gravios, which requires you to be Hunter rank 31 or higher, that has the rusted weapon shard as an appraisal item, which is rarity 6. And finally, here we have a tempered Arcfelt, which requires you to be Hunter rank 41 or higher, and the appraisal item is the ancient weapon fragment, which is of rarity 7. And once you finish one of these quests or investigations, you will be appraising all of these weapon shards. So let's see what we get. And as you can see, they turn into all of these other relics that are going to be needed to craft all kinds of different Artian weapons. And it even shows below the weapons that you can craft with each of these different weapon parts. Because when we return to Gemma here, and once you have those parts already collected, you will have this option here to forge the Artian weapons. And then of course you can select which of the different weapon types you would like to craft. So let's say that we want to craft a longsword. Here on the left, there's going to be the part selection, aka the materials that we need in order to craft a longsword. Now, as I showed you before, there's going to be different rarities for each of these different parts. And one thing that you cannot do is if you put in a rarity 6 part, you can then only put rarity 6 parts as well, and you will obtain a rarity 6 weapon at the end, which is what you see on the right side of the screen. Likewise, if I put a rarity 8 component in here, I can only add more rarity 8 parts to the weapon. And as you can see, as I scroll through all of these different parts, the stats on my weapon on the right is constantly changing. So how does choosing any of these parts affect the weapon that you end up building? What is the best way to do it? And how do you further improve the weapon? So for starters, every single weapon type that you can craft in the game requires different specific parts. For example, the greatsword requires you to have 2 different blades together with a tube, whereas the sword and shield requires 1 blade, 1 tube, and 1 disc. And of course, all of these parts come from the loot you receive when you finish those tempered investigations. Additionally, each of these individual parts that you have are all going to come with a specific elemental type as well as an Artian bonus. And these Artian bonus only come in 2 different fashions. They are either an attack infusion or an affinity infusion. That is to say, if I add an affinity infusion to my weapon, I'm going to get additional affinity, which is the critical chance to deal critical damage. So as you can see, I currently have 10%, and if I change to an attack infusion, it is lowered to 5%. So the affinity infusion is giving me 5% crit chance, whereas the attack infusion is giving me 5 raw attack. Now, as for the elements, you need to pay attention here because things can get complicated and you can actually mess up and end up making your weapon worse because of this. So let's say that we add a broken blade that has the fire element, and now for the 2, we add one that has the water element. As you can see on the right side of the weapon, it currently still has no element. If I were to add another part of a different element, the only thing I would increase in my weapon would either be the attack or the affinity because of the attack or the affinity infusion. However, if I add a water element and now I have two different pieces with the water element, my weapon is actually going to get that same element. So as you can see, I have 270 water on my longsword. So you really don't get any benefit out of having multiple different elements on your weapon, and the same goes for ailments as well. If I add paralysis on here and I add poison or any other element, there's really no benefit to doing this. So ideally what you want to do is have not 2 but 3 parts all of the same element like I have right here, with all of these pieces giving me paralysis for my weapon, as that is going to give you the highest amount of element that you can get on a weapon. And for simplicity's sake, the game treats the ailments, that is poison, blast, paralysis and sleep, as if they were an element. Now ideally you will want to craft the Artian weapons of rarity 8 since they are the ones that come with the highest stats, on top of having 3 level 3 decoration slots which allow you to further customize your build and offer a lot of offensive options, since some of the best skills you can have in the game can only be found in weapons. And very few weapons in this game come with a good amount of decoration slots, so this is one of the reasons why these weapons are so powerful. And the lower rarity you go, as you can see, rarity 7 has 3 level 2 decoration slots, and rarity 6 is still 3 level 2 decoration slots, but the stats are even lower. Now what is the ideal amount of attack infusions or affinity infusions that you should go for on each weapon is going to vary depending on your build, as a lot of affinity can be gained through various different skills, and is especially easier to obtain for weapons that typically don't spend a lot of stamina because of skills like maximum might, offering you a good amount of affinity provided that you have max stamina. Me personally, I always like to go for 1 or 2 affinity infusions, and again always making sure that you have all 3 components with the same element. So let's go ahead and craft this dragon insect glaive so I can show you how you can actually max it out and make it so much more powerful. And there you go, we now have this dragon insect glaive. The design of these Artian weapons is very unique, and you'll notice that they even change as you upgrade them, as I have this other insect glaive right here that is maxed out. It is a little bit smaller when it is stowed away, but the moment that I take it out, as you can see, it gets bigger and it now has this cool animation. But once you craft your Artian weapons, you're going to have this option under Forge Artian weapons called Reinforced or Dismantle Artian weapons. In order to reinforce these Artian weapons, you're going to require a specific type of material, and it's all of these ores right here, with the Oricalcite being the one that you want to have the most. And as you can see, you will need 50 of these in order to max out the weapon. So the way that this works is whenever you add enough materials to reach the 3-point benchmark that is down there, you'll be able to get a reinforcement bonus on your weapon, which is indicated by the green question marks on the right side of the weapon. These are not fixed, they are randomly generated, and there are only 4 different reinforcement bonuses that you can get on your weapon. And they are Sharpness Boost, which provides you with 30 additional sharpness units, which is very powerful, an Attack Boost that provides you with 5 flat attack, an Affinity Boost which provides you with 5 affinity, and Elemental Boost which gives you 30 additional element on your weapon. So let's go ahead and fill these reinforcement bonuses up before I tell you how you can farm these materials and how to reroll these upgrades if you don't like the ones you get. 2 affinity boosts, 2 sharpness boosts, and 1 elemental boost. Ideally what I look for in a weapon is to have at least 1 sharpness boost, since 30 sharpness units is a lot, especially considering that handicrafts, a very powerful decoration that can be very difficult to slot into some builds, only gives you 10 sharpness. So getting 30 units out of this, potentially even 60 like I have right here, is really fantastic because it allows you to not use skills like razor sharp or handicraft, which are there to maintain your sharpness. And in case you don't know, you always want to have a weapon with white sharpness, since the highest level of sharpness your weapon has, the more damage it will deal, with white being the most powerful sharpness level that we currently have in the game. Now that said, I do feel like having 2 affinity boosts as part of my reinforcement bonus, on top of 2 affinity boosts that I got from crafting the weapon, is a little bit too much. So what do I do in this case if I want to get a different roll on my weapon? Well, that is where the dismantle process comes in. By selecting this option, you're able to select any of these Artian weapons, and by dismantling the weapon, you'll receive the exact materials you used to reinforce the weapon to get all of these reinforcement bonuses. So since I used 50 Oricalcite on this weapon, if I dismantle it, I will be able to get all of them back. I will also get 1 Artian as a second material for dismantling it, and that material is going to be different depending on the rarity of the weapon that you dismantle. Now one thing to note here is that you don't get back the materials you used to craft the Artian weapons, aka aka these parts right here. You don't get those back when you dismantle a weapon. But given how many you're able to get if you follow the method that I'm going to be showing you in a moment, you really won't have a problem in getting these parts, as you can get a ton of them very easily. So let's go ahead and dismantle this longsword right here, and just like that we'd get materials back. And since I also have these rarity 7 and 6 weapons already crafted, I might as well go ahead and dismantle them and get these Oricalcites back. It should also be noted that you come here to Suja, the Peaks of Accord, and by talking to the Elder Melder right here and selecting the Meld Relics option, we're able to craft even more of these pieces, including the rarity 7 ones, with the ancient weapon fragment being entirely random, but with these 4 you are able to select the specific parts that you would like to get. So for example, if I want blades, I can click here and select from all of these items. And the best part about it is that you can select parts from lower rarity, so if you have a few sparing rarity 6 and 7 parts, you're able to trade these in and end up getting more materials. You can also use the Wyverian Bloodstone shards that you end up getting as you play through the game. As you can see, I have a ton of them because I've been fighting primarily against the tier 3 monsters, which are the ones that drop the Wyverian Bloodstone Large and the Bloodstone Chunk. And as you can see, by just using one of these, I'm able to get 3 different fragments. So it is very easy for you to farm these without a shadow of a doubt, getting 42 of them just like that. Oh, look at all those parts. So yeah, definitely do not forget about the Elder Melder, as you can get a lot of time saved up by simply going up to her and trading in these items. So as I alluded to before, the way that you get these parts to craft the Artian weapons is with these Tempered Monsters investigations that have them as a reward. The game basically has defined every single monster in the game into one of 3 different tiers, with the tier 1 monsters being the weakest out of all of them, such as Characabra, Chemetris, Yenkutku, Gypsaros, Lalabarina. The tier 2 monsters would be Rathalos, Rathian, Doshiguma, and a few others, whereas the tier 3 monsters would be Arkveld, Raidao, any other Apex, so that is Jin Dahad, Uthduna, or New Udra. And each of these tiers requires you to be of a different hunter rank, so if you want to hunt the tier 1 monsters, you need to be hunter rank 21 or higher, 31 or higher for the tier 2 monsters, and 41 or higher for the tier 3 monsters. Ideally, you always want to go for the tier 3 because again, these are the ones that give you the necessary materials to craft the rarity 8 Artian weapons, and as I told you in some of my previous videos, sometimes you can get lucky and get an investigation like this, which comes with 2 different monsters. Well, if you get really lucky, you can get one of them like this. Because they have a secondary monster, you're going to be obtaining a lot more rewards out of them. So as you can see, by doing this, I will get 9 ancient weapon fragments that you can then appraise at the end of the quest, that usually ends up being around 20 materials to craft the Artian weapons by the end of the investigation. So it is very important, if you want to farm these, to always open up the map every once in a while, take a look around the different areas, and if you find an investigation that you want to save up, let's pretend that instead of Gravios I have an Arkveld right here, I would then be able to start this quest and also save it as an investigation, which by then talking to Alma, I'm able to repeat up to 3 additional times. So these are the investigations that you will want to repeat over and over again to get as many materials to craft the Artian weapons. Now there is one method that allows you to do this even quicker, and that is actually pretty simple. All you do is basically you go up to a tent and you rest to pass the time. So let's go ahead and change it to daytime, for example. You don't even need to change the environment. All it takes is one time passage, which is going to cost 300 resource points, and you're going to have a ton of them by just playing the game. As you can see, I have 22,000, so you don't have to worry about spending too many of them. This is exactly the best way to be spending them, in my opinion. Well, it's a new day, so then you go ahead and you check the map and look for investigations that are going to have a tier 3 monster with a secondary monster. In this case, I wasn't lucky. None of these have the investigation that we're looking for, so if you are impatient, go back to the tent and do it one more time. Again, the exact time that you change to or the weather that you change does not matter. All it needs is for you to force the game to pass the time. Is in the same place where you can check the different monsters that are available. If you press the right bumper twice, you can go into the weather forecast, and this shows you the new monsters that will be showing up if you decide to wait for them. So for example, we have a Tempered Raidao, and we would have to wait around 30 minutes for him to show up naturally. And this map is telling us that he's gonna show up in the fallow, but if we change the weather here to the fallow inside of the tent, you will see that that same Raidao is not here. That is because, again, each time that you go inside the tent and decide to change the weather or the time of day, you're basically going to get an entirely different table of monsters that are going to be available, so do be mindful of that. So by either manually changing the day or naturally getting the notifications that a new quest has been added, you'll get investigations like these that will net you rewards like these. Now going back to the best NPC in the game, how the hell do you get these Oricalcites? How do you farm them? As if you go exploring around the map, you're not going to find many of them. Well, it's actually pretty simple. If you go to the oil well basin, specifically the Everforge, and then you open up the map, you're going to find this right here, the smelting foundry. If you talk to this guy, Rockcool, you'll be able to access the smelting foundry, and in here not only can you smelt armor spheres, which of course allow you to improve the defense of your armors, you can also go to the festival shares and obtain some additional materials like this Oricalcite right here, although you won't be getting many of them. The reason you're here is to smelt ore. So as you can see, I'm able to select the Oricalcite, and now you'll be able to select any monster material that you might have, and each of them is going to have a corresponding value, and you're able to trade in these materials in order to get the Oricalcite, which again you need 50 of to max out an Artian weapon. Now this might make it seem like it takes a long time to get these, but trust me, because the tier 3 monsters are Gormagala, Arkveld, and the 4 apex monsters of each region, these materials can be traded in for a ton of points. As you can see, the Gormagala materials range from 70 points all the way to 80 points, with the Gormagala gem being 800 points. You would almost get 3 Oricalcites out of one of these. And again, you're going to be hunting these monsters a lot, so you're going to be getting a lot of items from them that you can then trade for these Oricalcites. You can of course use the automatic smelting option or choose to smelt a different ore instead of the Oricalcite, but there's really no reason to do so, so just go with the Oricalcite instead. And just like that, you'll be able to get tons of materials to craft all kinds of Artian weapons, so you can reroll them and get the perfect reinforcement rolls on your preferred weapon. If you found this guide helpful, please subscribe to the channel, share it with your friends, and leave a like as well, as it really does make a big difference on my YouTube videos. With that being said, my name is Dark Hero, thank you all so much for watching, and as always, happy hunting!